What's up, everybody? This is Dan from the Fundamentals with another unboxing for you. A rather interesting one. This week, it's Warriors of Krynn, Dragonlance, a Dungeons & Dragons published board game. Not Avalon Hill, not WizKids, Dungeons & Dragons. Interesting choices there. So, background on this, if you didn't know already, and you can read a little bit about this in some of the reporting I've done. So, Dragonlance comes out. Shadow of the Dragon Queen is the book that is tied to this. And that's the D&D sort of adventure book introducing Dragonlance back into 5th edition. And tied into that is this game, because that book has a lot of battle sequences in it, and they thought rather than make you do the laborious task of running battle in D&D, which is hard, they said, what if we made it into a game? So this is that game. So this is the base version of it. You can get this by itself, but there's also a deluxe bundle of Shadow of the Dragon Queen that has this, a special copy of the book, and a copy of a special DM screen that you can purchase. And it all comes in one big bundle. And that's a really nice bundle if you check that out. But this is the base game, $50. And you can play it as its own sort of strategic game or as a supplement to the game. I think there's about 6 battles in here from the adventure that kind of scale through, and the book will tell you when to go to it. This is the game itself, designed by Rob Daviau and Stephen Baker, who Rob is one of the leads at Restoration Games. He's also an Avalon Hill alumnus, being the guy behind, of course, Betrayal at the House on the Hill. So we're going to see lots of dragons and things. The back, Battle for the World of Dragonlance, which is also famously, if you aren't familiar with it as a D&D setting, it's also a famous fantasy setting, of course still D&D, by Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss. The army of the evil Dragon Queen marches across the land, leaving destruction in its wake. An alliance of desperate defenders stand against the relentless march of the ruinous dragon army. On the battlefield and beyond, it's up to a small band of adventurers to turn the tide of battle and save Krynn. Hero figures, hero board, plastic markers, it's got everything. So it's not necessarily like a risk-type strategy game, because that's not how a character in D&D would be playing it. This isn't like old-school D&D where you're running whole armies. Your adventurers are running around the margins. So it's not too bad. It has a lot of cardboard in it. There's not enough minis. You think that there's a couple minis for the characters, which is nice, but get our punch-outs. These are... I actually got a chance to play this with Dan from the D&D group, different Dan, from the D&D production squad, writing D&D team, however you want to call it, Dan Dillon. And it was really fun to play this. I played it with Gabe Hicks and Johnny Stanton, which were 2 really interesting people to finally get to meet in person after seeing them online so much. But you can see these are how the different enemies are represented. You can see they have these... let me see if I can zoom in, actually. That might be easier than trying to see zoomed out. Yeah. So you can see they have these abilities, which are what characters are trying to beat in the game. 2 strengths for the mooks, 4 for these guys. They're trying to beat those with sort of similar roles. War engines, different characters. Which ones show up will depend on what scenario you're doing. Flanks are important. These are different locations: the rocky ledge, the wood, dragon army outpost. You can see that this bluff has an intelligence on it. Skirmish with line of your choice on a neighboring battle tile. Special thing you can do on certain areas. And basically what you're doing, you can see they've double backed, is your characters are running around, the battle lines are lined out, and they're trying to do different quests, take out enemy commanders, prevent the battle lines from getting too overwhelmed, shore up any holes until reinforcements arrive, it's pretty dang hectic. I mean, we barely won when I played this last. Your goal in this game isn't to win the battle at all. That is borderline impossible most of the time, just because of the way that it's laid out. Your goal is to get your victory achievements done, kill the right people, do the right things, sometimes it capture the flag. It just depends on what the scenario is. And then that, of course, reflects, the outcome in the book you can play with. You can see there's more locations and enemies there. We've got, these are cool, they're dividers for the storage tray you can use to keep track of things. And these are our characters. Well, okay, so you have two options here. This is the first one, which is using these characters, which are all basically the same. They're just flavor. There's a lady with a sword who's supposed to be like a fighter elf. There's sort of like a monk guy. There's a rogue halfling, a very dwarfy dwarf. I like Temtemble. He's a druid-looking guy, an Iriad. So you can play with them, and they're good for the standalone game. Just, playing with friends, just wanting to have an adventure. But the cool thing is, none of these have any, set traits. There's no established thing. So you can basically use literally, you just use your characters from your adventure. You say, oh, yeah, I'll use Bogthar the Mighty, or I'll use Jester, or I'll use, Grog, whatever characters you have, and bring them in here, use the same boards, and they work the same way, and then you just, focus on whatever skills most fit your character. And then, again, they chose to use minis to represent your characters, so you can naturally use your own minis. So there's Tem, but of course these are honestly very nice little minis. They have that kind of washed look that Restoration uses in Unmatched. They look a little bit doity. That's Ayik. So you clearly have plenty of. Let's see, I think that is Iriad. And then there's Andir and Rig. So it's also a clean delineation of, we've got a couple elves, we've got a dwarf, we've got a halfling. Obviously, if you're playing more of a monster race, these aren't perfect, but you can just use a mini from your collection or the one you've been using. It's really great for that. And this is also a great way to kind of have, maybe you do a lot of theater of the mind in your game. It's a great way to kind of graduate out of that. You know what I'm saying? Try something a little bit different. And then we have, so these are the boards. So the battlefields are, these are where the enemies were laid out. Each of these is a different group of enemies. These are like foot soldiers, these are archers, and these are cavalry. And basically they'll go back and forth fighting each other. And your job is to try to not die. Maybe if you're starting to lose some here, you pick where you're shooting, all that kind of stuff. There's some tactics, some not. All depends on the game. But there's a lot of places, mountains, abandoned fields, scrublands, the canyon. See anywhere interesting? It's a battle, so mostly open. There's a city wall one that's kind of different. The Broken Lands, which are more sort of Mordory part. So that's the board. It's really not a board, which means, honestly, it's not bad for a smaller table, if you don't have a big, huge board to devote to sort of like a risk-type game. Of course, we've got two books. We have our scenario book. They use tissue paper to break things up. Very nice. Very fancy. This has this is kind of magazine-y, but it's got all the, this is Dark Moon Rises. It is scenario 6. So you have to take out the 4 Alliance commanders and shut down the Dragon Army portals. If you win, you get to if you have enough honor, there's commanders you can work with on your side and that you have to kill on their side. There's certain events that can affect it. Shows you all, and this is how the battle would kind of lay out. You've got, see the 1, 2, 3, 4 battlefields. The red being, your team. The purple being the baddies, and you would have your flanks, your centers. Those are all based on what cards, what attacks happen. You see there's an enemy there. Oracle. Oh no, the red is the bad guys. I always remember that because Red Dragon Army reminds me of the Red Ribbon Army from Dragon Ball. So that's how I remember that. But it tells you all the components there. After this scenario, read the following text. The camp is in chaos when you return from a mission. A sergeant tells you the story. After you left, a Dragon Army ritual called the Alliance commanders to join the enemy. Oh no! You also receive a message from Commander Thea, one of the mages of high sorcery. The Dragon Army is using the Munuitari's magic to create portals that will allow the Dragon Army to summon reinforcements. So it tells you here that how magic works. There's portals to deal with, enchanted commanders that have their unique abilities. It reads like a D&D book. So each scenario dictates the layout and your goals. And then here's the rule book, which is a little bit more substantial. It's got all these story things, depending on where you go, what you do, things to read out, events to act out. Give it that kind of story flair that you want from D&D. We've got our dice that you roll. They're just regular. No D20 in this. Nope. We've got good guy pieces. We've got bad guy pieces. It looks like Monopoly. And then we have, so the board is, the box is actually very nice. Let me show you. These are where the minis were. This is where all the pieces sit. Cards sit in here, and they've got a divider, which you then use those punch outs to divide things up with. But these are events. You're going to open these cards, and you're about to begin a legendary tier scenario. I won't spoil those, but that's... Where'd my trusty knife go? Haha! You really get something like a sword. You're more thematic than an old fish-gutting knife, but needs must. You can see, find out more QR code. You can see these are the abilities. These are different classes you can pick. Barbarian, Bard, Druid. It's got one for each of them, essentially, I think. And so each of these abilities are the cards you get. So you get 2 charisma cards, a wisdom, and a strength. And you play those. This game's all about playing cards. It's similar to, something like, honestly, Unmatched, which is a Rob Daviau design. So it's kind of like if Unmatched were a bit bigger. Anyway, you're really good at these, which is, remember those things I told you about where you have the special abilities? That's where these come into play. But also when you play your character cards, so a paladin, for instance, they play one of their charisma. Remember, they're going to have 2 charismas, a wisdom, and a strength. Their charisma cards, they can play one as a response to certain things, or like that. So those are the responses, like immediate. Monk has strength and dex, and they also get a constitution. So they can use their action to, and stress is damage in this. It's not like damage, there's stress. You can basically just beat up someone by taking stress, or you can respond with patient defense, or just move it to 3 tiles. So that's kind of how you reflect your character. Obviously, it's not going to be the same rules and same exact thing as your character in the game, but you can get the general vibe for how they would act in this sort of scenario. So I think this is honestly a really fantastic gift to DMs specifically because battle sequences are so difficult to make and so difficult to make fun. And it really enhances the whole experience that you can kind of play through that and see the kind of, see the kind of things that your players will be wanting to deal with. And it's just, I think it's a fun game. I mean, if people who are fans of D&D, if you don't have time to play D&D, you want to kind of inhabit the world a little bit, this is pretty dang good. There's another game coming out that's doing a similar thing, which we will see more about in a little bit, but for the time being, Warriors of Krynn is not a bad option in my opinion. So, go ahead and if you just want to play the game, go check it out, pick it up. If you want to get the whole shebang with the book and everything, I highly recommend that combination. It's a great combo, a lot of good options there. I'll have links down below. And yeah, it's something to check it out. I'm excited to see if maybe we do more with this format in the future, maybe more other settings or more adventures, more scenarios. It's kind of got an ability to create more and more and more. It's very expandable. So I'm hoping they do that, but with Avalon Hill, who knows? So, until next time, happy rolling.